Welcome to another episode of Coach's Corner on GTN, where we answer all your triathlon related questions. Remember, you can leave your questions below this video, use the hashtag GTN Coach's Corner, or below any of our videos, and we'll answer them in a future episode. So let's get to your questions. Starting with this one from Emma G, and she says, hashtag GTN Coach's Corner. I've recently purchased my first triathlon bike after training and racing on road bike for a while. I'm going to get a bike fit once it arrives and would love to know some strategies and best practices for getting used to riding on it. Is using it on indoor trainer initially helpful to get used to the position, or is it better to just ride it outside straight away so I can get to work on my bike handling skills? Is there anything else I can do outside of my cycle sessions to help? I already incorporate strength training and stretching into my weekly routine. Well, I would say get it outside as soon as you can. Obviously the temptation is to just be on the turbo. It's probably already going to be on your turbo trainer from your bike setup, and the temptation is to get on and pedal it and lock down in that position. But a time trial bike is going to feel very different to a road bike. It's going to feel very narrow, you're going to feel very far forward, and it's going to feel very twitchy compared to that road bike you're used to. So the sooner you can get out there and start getting used to it, the better. It is going to take a bit of time.
Yeah, as we've mentioned before actually, riding a TT bike can feel a bit uncomfortable, and you can waste a lot of energy just by being quite tense in the aero bars, pulling on them, and just not being used to cornering or going around potholes or just the bumps in the road. So as soon as you get out on the road on it and just sort of relax into that position and get really used to it, and also just make the most of that new position and trying to cut through the air, the better, basically.
Yeah, if you can do harder intervals once you get to harder training, do that on the turbo, because you don't have to watch so much, you don't have to get to your brakes if there's a speed bump or a traffic light or anything like that. So it is nice to do those harder sessions on a time trial bike indoors where you don't have to worry so much about that high speed that you're picking up. But you do want to get used to it as soon as possible. As we say, they can be pretty uncomfortable, and you will lose any aerodynamic benefit of having a time trial bike if you're too nervous to actually get down into those bars.
One last point, and this goes the same for anyone that's just getting into using aero bars or a TT bike, is you may want to build it up gradually. I mean, hopefully you aren't drastically changing your position. It's going to be so uncomfortable. But if you haven't used aero bars before, it's a bit of a change position. You may just want to start off with short stints in the aero bars, get used to that, out, back in, and then just making those stints in the aero bars a little bit longer with time, just going in that course.
And the other part of the question was what she can do outside of actually riding the bike to get used to it. The only real thing you can do there is a stretching and flexibility. Yeah. You're going to have to be in a slightly different position. Hip flexors, particularly glutes, and then your neck. You're going to have to be able to look up, and you can actually practice this. For a while, you can actually start watching TV. By lying on the floor in front of the TV and actually lifting your head up and watching TV. It actually works.
I've never heard that one. That's good. Yeah. Right. Next question from Benjamin Donut. I registered for my first triathlon Olympic distance with the goal to finish it and enjoy it as much as I can. I had a question about nutrition. I understand from your videos I don't need electrolyte for such distance, and also that I need to take on some carbohydrates. But how about taking enough calories? Should I try to match the calories I burn during the event, so probably around 2,000 calories, or is it sufficient to eat enough carbs?
Whoa, well, I think you answered the question yourself there when you said, do I need to eat 2,000 calories in a 2.5 hour event? Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you're not going to have much time for breathing if you are eating 20 gels in a 2.5 hour event, or the equivalent in some other fuel source. So yeah, you can't replace everything you burn while you're exercising by eating it. What you're looking to do is to limit the amount you use in your stores as much as possible, so you kind of conserve those stores so that you can get further before those stores run out, because when those stores run out you can only then use your fat reserves, and that means slowing down so that your body can use those.
Now, just to clarify, I mean, we have glycogen stores within us and we build that up, and typically speaking that will last us somewhere between an hour to maybe up to 2 hours, depending on the pace or the intensity you're going at. So yeah, as James is saying, you're probably going to be racing for around 2.5 hours, so yeah, you will probably start slowing down a bit towards the end, which is why you maybe want to think about topping that up a bit.
Yeah, if you can conserve some of that and extend it, maybe 30% of it by eating something, then obviously you can, as you can see, you'll probably get all the way to the 2.5 hours before you only running on fat reserves and no glycogen reserves. But the reality is no one, and I'm talking even the professionals here, can take in more than about 400 calories an hour. Most people are going to hit their limit around 300 calories an hour while exercising. Any more than that, and your body can't absorb it. There's no blood flow to the gut. It's just going to sit in your stomach and make you feel pretty ill. You might even throw it up. So don't eat more than 300 to 400 calories an hour, regardless of what you're doing, and train your body up to do that. And everything else after that is just too much. So that's what you can take, and you should build some kind of nutrition plan for that. I would say you also can't eat or drink while you're swimming. So that's another factor in your Olympic distance triathlon. Eat something early on the bike, eat something around the middle of the bike, and eat something towards the end of the bike. And if you really need to, have something on the run, but that's about it. A few gels, maybe energy bar in the middle.
And also you did mention about no electrolytes for an Olympic distance. Now, I'd actually say you may want to, because it really does depend on the course, the temperature, and also yourself. Like James and myself, we have very different sweat rates and salt concentration within the ice. I have a very salty sweat, whereas yours is average. So I would need electrolytes in Olympic distance, even in sunny old UK. So it's not a write-off as to having electrolytes just because it's a short distance race.
Yeah, the other factor on that is that although even if it's a particularly hot one, you're probably not going to run out of electrolytes in a 2.5 hour Olympic distance race, but your body will absorb fluids a lot better if it's at the same osmolality is the word as your body, which means it can absorb much better if it has some salts in it versus just water. So it is worthwhile having electrolyte drinks on your bike rather than just water.
And you'll feel a lot better afterwards.
Exactly.
Next question from Chris Ford. I have had my first 70.3 race cancelled on June the 5th. No. But I want to complete my first 70.3. When I find a race that is feasible, how should I continue my training? Should I just reset it to the same point as to where I was before this race? I.e., if the race is in 2 months, should I just reset my training to where I was 2 months ago?
Well, that's actually not a bad plan to reset it back to where you were 2 months ago and do that last 2 months of your program again, getting ready for the next race. But what you're actually going to do there is lose a bit of the advantage of having your race moved. You're already going to be slightly too fit for that effort level that was set in your program 2 months ago because you've done a whole bunch of work since then, and it's not really going to stimulate you, it's not going to push you, and you basically are just sacrificing fitness to get back to where you were. What I would suggest, of course, you don't also want to just add on another 2 months at the intensity you're currently doing ready for your race, because you will burn out, absolutely. So what I would say is split the difference. Go 1 month back in your program. So you've taken a week off, relaxed, get over the disappointment of having that race cancelled, because that is disappointing. And then take your program 1 month back and then build it for that last month again, and then 1 more month on top of that, which will get you even fitter than you were going to be for your race to begin with. So, it's a bit of a silver lining there.
Yeah, depending on the sort of level you're at and the training you're doing, but 70.3, you may be doing a lot of sort of sweet spot intervals, threshold tempo efforts. Those are the sort of sessions that can really damage you and be quite a stress on the body. So if you've kind of built them up with time, getting closer to the event, if you carry on, as we've said, at that sort of level as you're approaching a race, you are going to burn out. So yeah, just bring those back in particular. So yeah, there's a good shout going sort of a month back, somewhere in the middle. Yeah, you
can be fitter for your race when it does eventually come up. Silver lining. All right, next question from Nick Grossfield, and he says, thanks, GTN. This is a great segue to a question that has gradually dawned on me the last week or so. I've done a few running events before, and now I've signed up for the Sydney City to Surf, which will be the largest event I've done yet by far. I normally like to do a warm-up involving a couple of easy 500-meter intervals, as well as some crab walks and zombie walks with a resistance band to switch on my hips and glutes. However, with so many thousands of people participating in the City to Surf, I expect there'll be nowhere near enough space for me to work through my usual routine without bumping into people everywhere. Do you have any ideas for a warm-up that can be done standing room-only conditions? Well, we're glad that you're doing your warm-up, because that's very diligent, and most people don't do that or neglect it, especially on race day. So good on you for doing it. I would say, though, it's a valid concern not being able to warm up, standing on the start line, really freezing cold and stiff as anything, and then you suddenly have to run at race pace. But a warm-up lasts a lot longer than you're probably giving it credit for. You could do your warm-up a solid hour and a half to an hour before your run, put a warm jacket on or tracksuit pants on, and So you will stay pretty warm and ready to go for that race all the way up to it. You will obviously not be ideal having just done that warm-up, but it will still be in your system. You'll still be pretty ready to go.
I was going to say, some of the exercises that they've suggested, sort of zombie walks, crab walks, are a lot about activation, and you could just do them in the morning, and that activation of the muscles is going to continue more or less through till the race, because you're still walking around. Those muscles are then going to still be activating. So yeah, you can definitely do that. Other things that you can do sort of static on the spot, which we've both done when standing on the start lines, is sort of those jumps up in the air, and you can sort of swing your arms a little bit. You might be able to make a little bit of space around you. But yeah, those little hops on the spots, jumping from foot to foot, big jumps up in the air, bringing your knees to your chest, just ways of sort of getting that blood flowing once you are just stood there. But as James says, you could probably still get away doing a warm-up.
Do your warm-up early and then use some clothes to keep you warm. You can then either throw them to your significant other just before the gun goes, or even have something disposable that you can throw away at the first aid station on that run to keep you warm before the race actually starts.
Okay, final question from Kevin Blankenberger. With summer coming and temperatures rising, my pace on my easy recovery runs has dropped so that I can keep my heart rate low in the hotter weather. However, now that I'm running slower, I find that my running form starts to fall apart, i.e. heel striking more and can't keep that slight forward lean. Do you have any tips or tricks for keeping good running form when running slow?
Oh, now Mark and I have a bit of an issue with this. Essentially, what's happening here is you've been a bit of a slave to your numbers. You've been set these heart rate zones, and they are important, your heart rate zones, that you stick to them as far as possible. But they're not that important that you should run at a slower pace than you can sustain, or that you should run easier just to keep your heart rate into this magic number that has been spat out by some formula for your zone 1 or your zone 2 runs. Essentially, if you had done your heart rate zone test in the same conditions that you're now doing that run, you would have got different numbers and your heart rate zones will be different. And if you factor that in, that your heart rate is going to be 10 to 15 beats higher in every zone for the hotter conditions that you're now running in, you will see that you're still in zone 2 as far as performance goes, at 10 to 15 beats higher because of the heat. So you can still run your run at 10 to 15 beats higher. You don't have to slow right down to an unsustainable, uncomfortable pace that you haven't trained for just because it's a bit hotter.
But you are absolutely right. If you do slow down, it is, for most people, going to affect their form. There's less bounce in your strides, and therefore you may find that you can't lean forwards, the various things that you may be feeling. So that's definitely a thing. We agree with you there. What you can do, other than just ignoring it and just accepting that your heart rate is going to be 10 to 15 beats higher, is perhaps just starting out easier on your run and then just building the second half so that you're not running at 10, 15 beats high for the entire run, should you need to.
Yeah, much like everything else, it's training. So if you need to train, you need to spend time at the effort level or the pace that you are currently running at, and build it up. So you can't suddenly expect to go from running an hour at 6 minutes a K to running an hour at 7 minutes a K, and your body's just going to be able to handle that. It needs to get used to running at 7 minutes a K. So start with the first half at 7 minutes a K, and then pick it back up to 6 minutes a K. You will be out of your zones, but you will slowly get used to that slower pace, and for the rest of the summer, you'll be more and more used to it. Essentially, like everything else, it does seem counterintuitive when you're slowing down that you should be able to go for further, but if your body hasn't got used to that pace, you're going to have to build up your endurance at that pace, even if that pace is slower than something you can actually sustain.
And I guess the final point, very unscientific, but don't be a slave to the numbers. Just enjoy the running.
Exactly.
Don't feel like you've got to walk or slow down. Just get that heart rate down.
Yeah, maybe ignore that heart rate monitor for a few sessions and run on feel, and afterwards you can review your heart rate and see what it was doing and how you felt, and you might see that, you know what, I can just adjust my zones a little bit for the summer and enjoy my runs more.
Nice. Well, thanks ever so much for all the questions. Please keep them coming in. Use that hashtag GTN Coaches Corner and drop them in the comment section below this one. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Give it a thumbs up if so, and don't forget to subscribe.